Now, the sad news that the film star Val Kilmer, who played Batman, and Jim Morrison, as well as starring in Top Gun, has died at the age of 65. His daughter told US media that he'd been suffering from pneumonia.
The Navy needs Maverick. The kid needs Maverick.
On April 1st, 2025, devastating news broke out. Val Kilmer had died at the age of 65. For a few years, Kilmer had been battling throat cancer. This vivacious man who was full of life suddenly lost his voice and vibrant health. After a strong fight, he finally succumbed to complications from pneumonia. Hollywood lost a legend. Fans from across the world mourn this complex man who left behind a lasting legacy in the industry with the roles he played.
My father was in the Air Force. I heard a lot of flying stories. Most of his are terrifying, though, so the fascination of... I've been flown since I was very young.
But the discovery that was made after his death was totally unexpected. What was this stunning discovery? Join us as we unveil the details. The unexpected news. The news of Val Kilmer's passing was something many fans feared was inevitable, but still no one was ready to face it. He had had to cope with a series of complications from pneumonia that resulted from years of health challenges, after throat cancer, and a tracheostomy. So when the news of his death got out, it wasn't really sudden, but it still felt like a shock. Maybe because many people were silently hoping he would win the fight ultimately. Already, he had gained a reputation as a fighter after outliving every prognosis the doctors had given him. So many of his optimistic fans didn't give up hope until the final curtain was drawn, so to speak. However, even if his death had not been shocking, the events following it couldn't have been anticipated. No one saw it coming. At first, the tribute trooped in from all angles, from his colleagues in Hollywood to his beloved fans online. Tom Cruise, who had been silent on Kilmer's illness all along, broke down in emotional tears during a surprise appearance at CinemaCon. He reminisced a memory of Kilmer he had from Top Gun. Although this was Kilmer's quietest scene as Maverick, he still left an unforgettable impression on Tom Cruise's mind. Another person with fond memories of Kilmer to share was Michael Mann, the director of Heat. He wrote a full-page reflection in Variety, calling Kilmer's instincts some of the sharpest he had ever directed. He was the kind of actor who could be thunder or shadow in the same scene. Cher, with whom he once had a relationship, also shared a touching post about Kilmer. She compared him to a force of lightning at a time when she wasn't ready for the storm. What made this remark even more sensational was that Cher rarely spoke about her past relationships publicly. Within hours, the post went viral. Other tributes poured in from Jim Carrey, Jennifer Tilly, and Kevin Bacon, and they all had the same sentiment that Kilmer had given them more than just performances. He'd given them memories that refused to fade. However, despite all these glowing tributes, something felt off. It was almost as if Kilmer had some unfinished business, and everyone could sense that his story wasn't finished yet. This was when the second bombshell dropped. Long before the end came for Val Kilmer, it was almost like he had arranged his life in a tidy order. This was understandable in a way. It was one thing he had complete control over, as he had to go to the hospital multiple times. Interestingly, he wasn't even doing this for his fans or anyone. He just did it to take his mind off what was happening to his body. It was a way to make sense of the silence that had taken over his life. After a tracheotomy robbed him of his natural voice in 2015, Kilmer turned inward. He began archiving as a form of survival. He recorded hundreds of video diaries. Sometimes it's just a few minutes long, sometimes silent altogether. There were notebooks filled with scribbles, half-drawn sketches, lines of poetry, and repeated phrases. The work wasn't polished, and it certainly wasn't meant for an audience. But it was honest and deeply personal. When this collection was discovered and listened to, one could picture how he must have felt during that difficult time. These recordings were the fragments of a man learning to communicate again in a world that had grown deaf to his silence. One particular file in this collection stood out. It was a short video under 4 minutes long, labeled "For Later." It had been created nearly 2 years earlier, but never shared. It wasn't directed at fans, family, or fame. It wasn't a goodbye. It was just an unfiltered expression. When he recorded this video, he was already losing his voice and had begun exploring AI-assisted technology. He used it to make the recording. One could hear the familiar cadence of his voice, even through the AI voiceover.
My voice improved, and some weeks are better than others, and tend to work until I'm 152.
Through Val Kilmer's debilitating condition, his fighting spirit still shone through. Although he lost his voice, he didn't just give up and disappear. He simply changed the medium. He lost his voice after undergoing a tracheostomy following his cancer diagnosis in 2015. For an actor known for commanding dialogue, his voice was the very thing that defined him. It must have been devastating. But it didn't stop him. He allowed himself to become open-minded and embrace text-to-speech technology, allowing him to communicate through a mechanical voice that bore no resemblance to the one audiences remembered. It was jarring at first, but he pressed on. He spoke through devices, posted through carefully chosen words, and let his art say what speech no longer could. His visual art became louder as his voice grew quieter. His posts on social media became more cryptic and poetic. Then, in 2021, he stunned the world. He released a documentary called Val. It was his way of reintroducing the world to himself. He never stopped filming, even when the world stopped watching. The documentary was a success. He culled it from thousands of hours of personal footage he'd captured over decades. The film brought together various sides of his personality, his unfiltered and erratic side, all stitched together with care and chaos. Some parts of the documentary were narrated by his son, Jack. Val was a raw documentary. It didn't try to sugarcoat the pain. It showed Kilmer at his most vulnerable. In some scenes, he was in hospital gowns, whispering through tubes, and reflecting on the absurdity of fame. There were moments of humor and heartbreak, clips of early auditions. The audience responded with awe and tenderness. In many ways, Kilmer's silence in this documentary spoke louder than any role he'd ever played. It was like a reminder to the man he was long before he became a famous legend. His childhood was filled with many interesting details that many people didn't know about him. Val Kilmer's background. Long before he became Iceman or Batman, Val Kilmer was a boy from the San Fernando Valley with an outsized hunger for art. He was born in 1959 in Los Angeles as the middle child to Gladys Swanette and Eugene Doris Kilmer. He lived with his parents and 2 brothers in the rural suburb of Chatsworth, on a former ranch once owned by Roy Rogers. His upbringing had some rocky bumps along the way. He suffered some emotional trauma when his mother, Gladys, and his father, Eugene, got divorced when Val was just 9. One of the things that made the split bearable was the early artistic kinship he had forged with his younger brother, Wesley. He would fondly speak of Wesley as a true genius, a budding director who helped Val land roles in home movies. Tragedy struck again when Wesley died at just 15 from a seizure-related drowning. This sad event haunted Val for life and deepened his reliance on the Christian Science faith that sustained him through later ordeals. Right from childhood, he was imaginative, restless, and unusually intense. He wasn't chasing fame. He was simply trying to find his foot. Nevertheless, by age 17, Kilmer's talent was already shining through. He attended Hollywood's professional school before Juilliard's drama program. Before transitioning to film, Kilmer had a notable stage career. He made his Broadway debut in 1983 in The Slab Boys alongside Sean Penn and Kevin Bacon. In 1988, He portrayed Hamlet at the Colorado Shakespeare Festival. He made history as the youngest student ever accepted into Juilliard's drama division. This was the start of what would turn out to be a great career. He started with Top Secret and Real Genius. His comedic timing and offbeat charm were undeniable, but The Doors was released in 1991 and really turned heads. Kilmer played the role of Jim Morrison, and he fully embodied it. He sang the songs, studied the tapes, slipped inside the soul of a rock god, and brought him back to life. Critics were stunned into silence. So were his fans. More iconic roles followed. His turn as Doc Holliday in Tombstone remains one of the most quoted performances in film history. It was deadly, witty, and heartbreakingly human all at once. As Iceman in Top Gun, he exuded quiet menace and magnetic cool. And then, of course, came Batman, a role he wore literally and metaphorically with discomfort. In the cape and cowl, he looked the part, but behind the mask, Kilmer seemed to wrestle with the machine of Hollywood. One day, on the set of Willow, the 1988 fantasy-adventure film directed by Ron Howard, Kilmer crossed paths with the British actress Joanne Whalley. Kilmer played the roguish swordsman Mad Martigan, while Whalley portrayed the fierce warrior Sorsha. Their on-screen chemistry was electric, with sparks flying between their characters as they bickered and battled side by side. Off-camera, they soon turned that fiery dynamic into a real-life romance. The pair quickly grew close during filming, bonding over their shared dedication to the craft and their experiences as actors navigating the intense world of Hollywood. Their relationship blossomed into marriage later that same year, marking one of the more memorable off-screen love stories to emerge from a film set. Though their marriage would end in 1995, Kilmer and Whalley remained connected through their two children, Mercedes and Jack. Despite the eventual breakdown of the marriage, Kilmer often spoke of Whalley with affection and credited their time together, both personal and professional, as a significant and formative period in his life. Both children followed their parents into acting and remained close to Kilmer throughout his life, especially during his battle with throat cancer. His career was growing, and everything seemed great until it wasn't. With brilliance came friction. Soon, Kilmer developed a reputation as being problematic. Some directors like John Frankenheimer and Joel Schumacher didn't mince words, calling him intense, unpredictable, and complex to manage. Kilmer, in his defense, was never shy about his standards. He always strived for excellence in every role he played. He had a mantra: if it's not great, why do it? This was reflected in all his roles. He was chasing perfection. That pursuit often clashed with industry schedules and egos. There was another interesting side to him that very few people knew. Not many people knew he loved to write poetry, or that he would leave long philosophical voicemails for his close friends and family. He was an artist in every sense. He loved sketching, sculpting, and journaling. He loved sharing his passion and curious worldview with his children at any opportunity. Val Kilmer lived his life at an intensity higher than the average. In 2022, Val Kilmer made a return no one thought possible. After years of coping with declining health and living in a world of silence, he appeared in Top Gun, Maverick, which was 36 years after first embodying the cool, cocky Iceman. But this time things were different. The sunglasses remained, but the bravado was gone. Instead, Iceman, now a decorated admiral, was sick, frail, and barely able to speak. Just like Kilmer himself. The role couldn't have been more fitting. It was designed to mirror Kilmer's reality. Iceman's pain was Kilmer's pain. His silence was Kilmer's silence. Hollywood's loudest franchise paused for something quiet, deeply human, and unmistakably real in just one scene. To bring Iceman back, the filmmakers used AI-assisted voice technology, drawing from archival audio to reconstruct Kilmer's voice with eerie precision. This was their way of paying tribute to the legendary actor, and it was more thoughtful that the gesture was made while he was alive. The result was a soft-spoken, carefully chosen line of dialogue that carried the weight of a career and a life. Behind the scenes, it was even more personal. Kilmer worked closely with the filmmakers on the structure and tone of the scene. When the scene finally hit theaters, it was sensational. It was as if the audiences weren't just watching Iceman and Maverick reunite. In a way, they witnessed Val Kilmer, their Hollywood favorite, say goodbye on his own terms. After the release of Top Gun: Maverick, Kilmer didn't ride the wave of renewed attention. He didn't want the press tours or interviews that usually follow these releases. Instead, he disappeared back into the quiet life he'd learned to embrace. While some fans might have hoped the role meant a complete comeback, Kilmer knew otherwise. His time in the spotlight had passed. And then, after his death on April 1st, 2025, came the unexpected final message in the form of a video. In addition to acting, Kilmer was an avid musician and writer. He released a demo album titled Sessions with Mick in 2007 and self-published a poetry collection called My Edens After Burns in 1983. Val Kilmer was also involved in various philanthropic efforts, including disaster relief trips to New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina. He was also an advocate for Native American affairs and environmental protection. In 2010, he considered running for governor of New Mexico, but ultimately decided against it. Val Kilmer's farewell video made him even more loved by his fans. One would expect a loud final performance or a grand Hollywood exit, but Kilmer preferred to exist with quiet resilience. In a way, he showed others that it is possible to attain greatness against all odds. Especially survivors of cancer, those living with regret, or those searching for purpose after their fame fades. What do you think of Val Kilmer's final unexpected message? Which of the movies he featured in do you think was his best work? We would love you to share your opinion in the comments section. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Also, click the next video shown on your screen. You will enjoy it.